My dad disowned me for being a truck driver. 2 years later, he begged for $400,000 to save his house. But he couldn't even remember my birthday. 28 hands. That's how many rose against me that night, like I was a criminal on trial. And the worst part? My own grandfather, the man who once held me on his knee and called me his favorite, stood silent until he picked up a pen and rewrote his will in front of the entire family. My name is Garrett. I'm 33. I live in a quiet suburb outside Minneapolis with my wife, Marissa, and our daughter, June. We run a small freight company. 10 trucks. Just enough to stay afloat. People think we've made it, that we're doing well. But this life we've built didn't come from ease or privilege. It came from rejection, from humiliation. Before everything changed, I was a long-haul driver clocking 70 hours a week just to pull in $4,000 a month after taxes. Marissa worked retail at a home decor shop. Low pay, barely any commission. We rented a cramped 2-bedroom in a sketchy part of Burnsville. Half my paycheck vanished to rent. The rest barely kept the lights on. I drive 14 hours straight from Minnesota to Oklahoma, sleep 4 hours, and turn right back around just to earn a couple $100 in overtime. I'd get home at 2 or 3 a.m., drop into bed like a corpse, then drag myself out again by 6. Marissa was holding everything together at home, barely. When business at the store slowed, she'd bring in maybe $1,700. We lived paycheck to paycheck, borrowed from friends, put off bills, cried over grocery receipts. When June turned 5, we threw her a birthday in our apartment. Grocery store cupcakes, dollar store decorations. She grinned so hard you'd think she'd been gifted a pony. I wanted to cry, not because she wasn't grateful, but because she deserved more. Then, December 2022, I got a call from Grandpa Earl. I was hauling furniture from Des Moines back to Minneapolis when his name flashed on the truck's Bluetooth screen. I answered instantly. His voice, warm, steady, comforting, filled the cab like a hug. "Garrett," he said, "come to the house this Christmas. Bring Marissa and June. I miss that little girl." I said yes before I even thought about it. Grandpa Earl was 79 that year, sharp as ever. He liked hosting these big family dinners every couple of years. He had 4 sons. My dad, Richard, was the eldest. Then came my uncles, Martin, Don, and Glenn. Martin was all show, no substance. He managed a regional office for some insurance firm and couldn't stop talking about contracts and bonuses. Every time he saw me, "Still on the road, Garrett? When's the promotion to CEO of Diesel Fumes?" Don ran a restaurant. Quiet guy, but cold. He'd look you up and down like your shoes told him everything he needed to know about your worth. But the worst by far was my father. Richard was obsessed with image. Ran a mid-sized construction company. Thought he was some kind of tycoon. He was embarrassed by me. Told anyone who'd listen that I was a disappointment. Still driving trucks, he'd sigh when people asked. Let's not talk about him. To his friends, I didn't exist. But he couldn't shut up about my younger brother, Chad. Chad, the engineer. Chad, who played lacrosse at Dartmouth. Chad, with the shiny new Audi. Only Uncle Glenn ever treated me like I mattered. He was a middle school teacher, soft-spoken, thoughtful, kind. One time he told me, "Your job feeds your daughter." That's something to be proud of. I didn't like my father, or Martin, or Don, but I loved Grandpa Earl. And if he wanted us there for Christmas, I wasn't going to say no. That night, after dinner, I told Marissa we'd be going to Grandpa's house. June squealed, arms around my neck. "I get to meet Great-Grandpa Earl. You sure about this?" Marissa asked after June ran off to draw him a picture. I knew what she meant. Every time we saw them, I came home hollowed out. She saw the weight I carried. The silence. The shame. "We'll stop by," I told her. "Say hello. Be polite. And if it gets weird, we leave early." 3 days later, June was still working on her drawing. Crayons everywhere. Her joy made me feel like maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be so bad this time. Christmas afternoon, we drove 2 hours north to Duluth. I picked up an apple pie on the way, Grandpa's favorite. We got there around 6. The driveway was packed. I recognized my parents' Camry. Chad's new Audi gleamed in the front. We parked around the block and walked in. The front gate was open. We stepped through and walked straight into a crowd. I counted at least 30 people. All the usual suspects. Plus cousins, distant relatives, new babies I didn't recognize. The house was buzzing. Uncle Glenn greeted us first. "Traffic bad." "A bit," I replied. "But we made it." Grab a seat, he smiled. Grandpa's coming out any minute. I took a breath. Maybe, just maybe, it would be okay. I was wrong. As we looked for a place to sit, a voice rang out like a gunshot through the room. It was my father. In this house, he said, loud and cold, seats are for people who've accomplished something. The room went dead quiet. All eyes turned to me. My stomach twisted. What are you talking about? I asked. Chad stepped beside him. It means losers like you don't belong here. I looked at Marissa. She held June close. Her lips were pale. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Then came the applause. Mocking, slow, deliberate. Martin smirked. Still chasing that dream, Garrett? Or are you just chasing trucks? Don added. We're tired of pretending we're not embarrassed. I couldn't take it. June stared at me, confused. Daddy, why are they being mean? And then, out of nowhere, Uncle Glenn stood up. Enough, he said. It's Christmas. For a second, the tension broke. Then I heard footsteps from the hallway. Grandpa. He walked into the room, serious-faced. Looked around. Everyone froze. And then he said the unthinkable. Let's take a vote, he announced. If you want Garrett to leave, raise your hand. The room exploded. The silence that followed Grandpa's words hit like a slap. If you want Garrett out, he repeated evenly, raise your hand. No one moved. The air felt heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath. My heart was thundering in my chest, and I tried to tell myself no one would actually do it. Then my father raised his hand. Just like that. His expression was flat, deliberate. His gaze locked onto mine, cold and final. I couldn't breathe. Then Chad lifted his, grinning like he'd waited for this his whole life. Next was Uncle Martin, then Don. Their wives followed, glancing at their husbands first like it was a cue they'd rehearsed. Even Martin's teenage son hesitated, then raised his hand with a guilty shrug. Marissa choked back a sob beside me. I looked down at June, who was clutching her drawing for Grandpa. Her face was scrunched in confusion. Mommy, why is everyone raising their hands? Should I raise mine too? Marissa dropped to her knees and hugged her tightly. 28 hands went up. 28. Only Uncle Glenn and Aunt Lynn sat frozen. Glenn stood suddenly. His voice was steady, but his jaw trembled. This is insane. He turned to Grandpa, almost pleading. You can't mean this. Grandpa looked back at him. I mean every word. Glenn's face twisted in disgust. Come on, Lynn. We're done here. He took her hand, passed Grandpa without looking, and stopped beside me. His hand on my shoulder was firm and warm. Let's go, Garrett. These people don't deserve you. I could barely move. My knees felt like rubber. But I nodded, grabbed Marissa's hand, and we turned toward the door. Then it happened. Stop right there, Grandpa's voice boomed. We froze. Everyone turned toward him, stunned. The fire in his eyes was something I'd never seen before. The ones who are leaving, he said, are not them. You could hear a pin drop. He scanned the room and pointed. The ones who need to leave are the ones with their hands in the air. Gasps. Shouting. A full-blown panic. What? My father barked. You've lost your mind. Chad shouted. Martin's face turned red. This was just a wake-up call, Dad. You can't be serious. Even Aunt Linda stepped forward, shaking. Earl, I just followed everyone else. I didn't mean it personally. Grandpa didn't budge. You all meant it. You just didn't expect consequences. He turned his eyes to my father, then Martin, then Don. I raised 4 sons. I taught you love, loyalty, dignity. And this is how you treat your own blood? Dad snapped back, trying to regain control. I wasn't mocking him. I was trying to push him to do better. He's 33, still hauling freight like some high school dropout. Grandpa's voice turned cold as stone. Funny you should say that. Because 12 years ago, when your construction business tanked and you owed nearly $300,000, Garrett was the one who dropped out of college to drive trucks, just so your family wouldn't drown. My entire body went numb. 18 years old, Grandpa continued. He gave you every paycheck, paid Chad's tuition, covered your mortgage, and you didn't even have the decency to thank him. Everyone went silent. Marissa's grip tightened on my hand. Glenn's eyes were wide with rage. Chad's face had lost all color. Grandpa stepped beside me, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said loud enough for the entire room. He gave up everything for you. Then he turned back to the rest. I was going to split the $4 million tonight. 4 sons, 6 grandchildren. That's $400,000 each. The room held its breath. But after what I saw today, Only two people deserve a dime, Garrett and Glenn. The reaction was instant. You can't do this, my father yelled, standing now. You're not thinking clearly, Don added, voice rising. Dad, come on, I'm your son, Chad pleaded. Martin's voice cracked. What about everything we've done for you? Grandpa held up a hand. Enough. And then he said it. I sold half the farm. And I'm giving every cent, $4 million, to Garrett and Glenn. Chad's mouth dropped. $4 million? Yes, Grandpa said calmly. And in 2 days, I'll be transferring the deed to the rest of the land, worth another $3 million, into their names. Chaos. Voices rose. My father stepped forward, falling to his knees. Please, Dad. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Just one more chance. Don tried to spin it. We were trying to motivate Garrett, not insult him. Chad ran to me, hands shaking, voice breaking. Garrett, I swear, I didn't mean it. I was being stupid. Please. But Grandpa didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. You made your choice. You all did. My father snarled, standing up again. You'll regret this. We'll take you to court. Don chimed in. We'll prove you're not mentally fit. Grandpa just smiled. Not kindly. The kind of smile that ends conversations. You think I'm old and confused? I'm sharper than all of you. Then he dropped the final blow. You forgot I still own the other half of the farm. It'll be in Garrett and Glenn's names by Thursday. Silence. Real, undeniable silence. The kind that means the battle is over. One by one they left. Bitter, red-faced, humiliated. My father stopped at the door and looked back at me. Are you happy now, Garrett? You broke this family. I didn't answer. I just reached for Marissa and June and held them close. We got home just after midnight. June had fallen asleep on Marissa's shoulder in the back seat, one hand still clutching the crumpled gift bag with her drawing for Grandpa. Her little fingers twitched in her sleep like she was still coloring in her dreams. Inside our apartment, I set her gently on the couch, pulled a blanket over her, and sat beside Marissa in silence. My hands were still sticky from apple pie, my shirt faintly smelled of roasted rosemary chicken, but my chest felt hollow. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt quiet. The next morning, I was making coffee, our usual cheap grocery blend, burnt at the edges, when there was a knock at the door. A long, deliberate knock. I already knew. I opened the door to find them, my parents and Chad, standing in the hallway like shadows. Dad's coat was too thin for December in Indiana, and Mom looked like she hadn't slept. I didn't say a word. Garrett, my father began. We just need to talk. My body instinctively moved to block the entrance. June's sleeping, I said, voice flat. We're not here to fight, Mom added, her voice trembling. We're here because we don't have anywhere else to go. My grip on the doorknob tightened. We're about to lose the house, Chad cut in. Dad got into a real estate deal, some land upstate, but it went south. They mortgaged the house. Now the lender wants $400,000 within 2 weeks, or it's gone. I stared at them for a moment. This was the same man who called me a disgrace for becoming a truck driver. The same family that voted to cast me out of Christmas dinner less than 48 hours ago. And now they were at my door, asking for mercy? You want me to give you $400,000, I said slowly, as if trying to convince myself I'd heard it right. Dad nodded without hesitation. It's just a loan, he added, like the word made it sound better. You're successful now. You have the means. We wouldn't be asking if we weren't desperate. I turned to face him fully. All right, I'll help you. Their faces lit up, but on one condition. Name it, Dad said immediately. Anything. Tell me my birthday. Silence. A single beat passed. Then another. I watched them, really watched, as their eyes flitted around, searching, struggling. Mom looked helplessly at Chad. Dad's brow furrowed like he was trying to read it off a teleprompter in his mind. October, he offered. October 10th. Chad frowned, then jumped in. The 15th. My jaw clenched. I waited another 5 seconds. Nothing. It's December 23rd, I said finally. The day I dropped out of college to take my first long-haul trucking job. The day I chose to support the family they now claimed I'd abandoned. You lived with me for 18 years, I said, and not one of you remembers my birthday. They said nothing. I opened the door just enough to step back inside. No anger, I said, looking them in the eyes one last time. Just clarity. And I shut the door. Behind me, Marissa stood with tears silently trailing down her cheek. She didn't need to say anything. I wrapped my arms around her. June was still fast asleep under her blanket, breathing softly. For the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not joy, not revenge, just peace. 2 days later, Grandpa kept his word. He invited us, just the 6 of us now, to sit in the sunlit living room of his farmhouse. There, on the coffee table, sat the documents. He handed me and Uncle Glenn each a deed. The farm, split equally. $7 million in total value, just like he said. No ceremony, no fanfare, just a quiet voice that had been still the entire time. You two are the only ones I trust, he said. I felt a weight settle in my chest, part honor, part pressure, part disbelief that after everything, this man still believed in me. Afterward, we didn't go out for champagne or spend a dime. Marissa and I stayed up late at the kitchen table, notebooks open, laptops glowing. We built a plan, not to live large, but to build something meaningful. No luxury cars, no expensive vacations, just stability, growth, a future for June. The next morning, I made 2 calls. First, I changed our phone numbers. Grandpa and Uncle Glenn were the only ones who got the new contact. Second, I submitted my application to the local business college for a program in operations and logistics. I'd never stopped learning on the road. This time, I wanted to do it with intention, because I knew this money wasn't a reward. It was responsibility, and I was ready to carry it. It's been 1.5 years since that night, since the moment 28 raised hands tried to erase me like I was just a smudge on their family photo. And yet somehow, standing in front of my own trucking warehouse in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I've never felt more grounded in who I am. No fanfare, no reporters, just Grandpa Ron, Uncle Glenn, Marissa, our daughter June, and me. That was enough. When I cut the red ribbon outside our warehouse, the blade trembled a little in my hand, not from nerves, but from disbelief. I'd finally built something of my own. Falcon Freight started small. 1 truck, a rented loading dock, a beat-up desk, and me, juggling night classes and long hauls, figuring out payroll with Marissa by flashlight during power outages. We made every mistake you can imagine, missed deliveries, botched invoices, broken equipment. But we learned. Fast. I reinvested every dime we made. Within 18 months, we had 10 trucks, 22 employees, and contracts with 3 regional retailers. We weren't just surviving, we were growing. We even bought a modest 2-story house in Zionsville. A big backyard, cozy fireplace, a sunlit window that June claimed as hers. That's when they came back. It was a quiet Tuesday. I was at the office signing off on a quarterly expense sheet when the door swung open, and there they stood. My father, Gerald, wearing a threadbare coat. My mother, Teresa, clutching a stack of medical bills. Both looked pale, worn thin by life. "We need help," Dad said, not even bothering with a hello. They'd lost their house in Anderson. Gerald had put everything into a shady real estate scheme with a cousin, and it blew up. The mortgage company took the rest. Trent had moved to Florida months earlier, and from the look on their faces, he wasn't answering calls. "We don't have anyone else," Mom whispered. "Please." They wanted $400,000. "Just to get back on our feet," Dad said. I said nothing, just stared. Their eyes darted, waiting for sympathy, maybe guilt. Then I asked calmly, "When's my birthday?" 5 seconds passed. Then 10. Gerald looked at Teresa. Teresa looked at the floor. He guessed October. She guessed the 12th. Trent once said the 17th. My birthday is December 23rd. I watched their faces crumble. Not from guilt, but from the realization that the son they abandoned had moved on. Without them, I wrote down a number on a post-it note and handed it to Gerald. It said, $0. "You didn't just fail me," I said. "You failed June. You gave her a memory of being voted out of her own family. You called it motivation. I call it betrayal." Gerald clenched the paper like he wanted to crush it into dust. But there was no fight left in him. They left without another word. That night, I sat on the porch with Marissa while June chased fireflies in the backyard. "Do you think you'll regret it?" she asked. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "No," because they weren't coming for forgiveness. They were coming for access. June ran up, held up a mason jar full of blinking lights, and said, "Daddy, look what I caught. We're rich." I laughed. "We are, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." Later that night, I opened my laptop and wrote a will of my own, not because I feared dying, but because I wanted June to know that no one would ever vote her out of her own family.